We start with a developing story out of Washington. The next round of coronavirus aid apparently hanging in the balance. And let's get right to it with Ilan Moy, who has the latest at this hour. Hi, Ilan.
Hi, Tyler. Well, the House has now begun debate on Democrats' $2.2 trillion relief package, with a vote expected later on this evening. And the House is moving forward with this bill because 5 straight days of negotiations between the Treasury Secretary and the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, have failed so far to produce a compromise. Now, the White House has proposed a $1.6 trillion package that includes $250 billion for state and local funding, as well as $400 a week in enhanced unemployment benefits. But those numbers are still far below what Democrats are willing to accept. And Pelosi also pointed to business and child tax credits as another major sticking point. In a statement, her office said that the two sides discussed further clarifications on amounts and language this afternoon, but distance on key areas remain. Now, Chuck Schumer, the top Democrat in the Senate, put it even more bluntly. He said they are not in agreement yet, and there are lots of areas of disagreement. Now, Democrats say that they can still negotiate with the White House even as they move to take this vote. But, Ty, the reality here is that lawmakers are going to go home once this is over, and that is going to make it much harder for a deal to get done before the election. Back over to you.
All right, Ilan, thank you very much. Well, stocks gave back some early gains today on renewed worries over the stimulus aid. So, Guy Adami, is D.C. going to come to the rescue of the markets? I'm thinking back to where we were basically a year ago, where the narrative was, are we going to get a trade deal? Are we not going to get a trade deal? And here, it looks like the market narrative that we're all talking about, whether it's really critical or not, is whether we're going to get a stimulus deal or whether we're not.
Well, first of all, Tyler, I know we don't work for a monarchy, but you are CNBC royalty. And on behalf of the other three, it's an honor to have you with us tonight. And with that said, I mean, to try to game out what's going to go on in Washington is very difficult to do. But I'll say this. You have a jobs number tomorrow. You have this going on in terms of the stimulus package. A lot hangs in the balance. The market's had a tremendous run off those lows we made, I think 3210 or so in the S&P 500. Today's high in the S&P was effectively a 50% retracement of the September 2nd high, the all-time high, and that recent low that I flagged. VIX was a little bit higher today. It's been trending that way. You know, I think the dangerous move is to the downside, given the things we just talked about, in my opinion.
Dan, how about you? Jump in here. I wonder how critical you think a stimulus or a second aid package is, not just to the economy, but to the stock market. Is it the principal part of the narrative that we should be following, or is it really, more importantly, how the economy is coming back and what's going on with COVID?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of, all of the above. How's that, Tyler? Okay. I mean, listen, the COVID thing, the market is acting as if there is no potential for a second wave at a time that we're starting to see spikes all over the country as we see schools and a lot of businesses reopening. So, the potential for a second wave and disruptions from that are pretty good. I think we can all agree there will not be the sort of lockdown that we saw in the spring. As it relates to stimulus, Fed Chairman Powell told us on a couple of times in September that monetary stimulus can only do so much. We need more fiscal stimulus. But here's the thing, this is fast money. We have a trading market. We have $1.6 trillion at $2.2 trillion. I think the White House really wants to get something done for political reasons. I think the House, which is run by the Dems, really want to get aid to the people that need it. So I think that we probably find something in the middle before the election. And I think that at the end of the day, that will help the markets. If you think about the volatility that we had, the downward volatility in September, I think it had a lot to do with obviously a bit of an overshoot in August, but then the likelihood that we are not going to see expanded unemployment benefits and a new stimulus package in September really kind of rattled some investors. So I would say all of the above. I would say that all of the above are not particularly priced into the equity market, and 3393, really big technical resistance in the S&P 500 with 3200, the most recent support that it bounced off of. Those are the levels I'm keying on.
Karen, I'm thinking, because I know everybody on this show is crazy about music. In between breaks, there are lots of references to old songs. I'm going to think of that song. I think it was called Why Don't You Just Meet Me in the Middle? I think it was Maren Morris. Am I right? Everybody? Or am I wrong?
Stuck in the middle with you, Steelers wheel.
Stuck in the middle with you.
Stuck in the middle with you.
That was Steelers wheel.
Yeah, stuck in the middle
but the
with you.
Maren Morris one is a little more contemporary, Tim. I'm just trying to get you there. Karen, would you do anything different in your portfolio tomorrow if there was a stimulus deal tonight?
Yes, I think I would. I think that you would have to be in more cyclical stuff. I think that I think the banks would do well, though they seem to be resistant to doing well in any scenario. But I would be more bullish for sure. I would be long the market. Probably take back protection. I would think the VIX would come down. I agree with everything each of them said, particularly Dan. I find myself in the unusual position of agreeing with everything Dan said about the stimulus, about the likelihood of the stimulus, why it weighed on the market in September, and what it would do in the short term. I think even more than positive vaccine data, a stimulus deal is much more immediate.
Really? Even more than a vaccine, it would have more tonic effect. Tim, wrap up the conversation here. What do you think?
Notice the royal wave to you, sir.
Hey there.
Also, I think, yes, the outperformance of transports and industrials as we got to the end of the third quarter is a trend I think you're going to absolutely see. Later on this show, we're going to talk about a resurgence in autos. But I think if you look at some of the machinery, whether it's a Cummins, whether it's a Whirlpool and light appliances, things that are supporting the construction boom, which, again, we got some construction spending numbers in the last couple of days. They were extraordinary. And I think those trends continue. Dan is talking about the overshoot of August. I think tech will continue to play ball, but I think they'll hold serve. I don't think they'll outperform. And I think that the trade into value from growth and not extreme value, because extreme value usually means things like bombed out industries or places like energy, which we can also talk about. But I like the trade into value names like some of these industrials that have actually very good balance sheets.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.